Sirens wail as a sheriff's cruiser screeches to a halt outside a rustic red barn where Eve Caldwell, in a garish choral dress, screams about savage bulls ruining her HOA festival. Her audacious plan to seize Jack Ramsey's private farm for profit unravels as 2,000-pound Angus giants, Titan and Brutus, stand guard, exposing her greed-driven trespass. A trail camera captures every damning moment, setting the stage for a suburban showdown that'll topple an empire. Like, share, and subscribe to catch this wild tale of justice and uncover more epic battles against tyranny. The sun hung low over the rolling fields of Jack Ramsey's 5-acre farm on the outskirts of Denver, casting a golden glow across the weathered red barn that stood as the heart of his land. Jack, a 38-year-old farmer with calloused hands and a quiet resolve, had carved out a life here, tending to his crops, restoring vintage tractors, and raising 2 massive Angus bulls, Titan and Brutus, each 1,000 pounds of muscle and pride. His farm, a patchwork of earth and sweat, predated the polished sprawl of Greenview Meadows, a new suburban enclave that had crept closer with its manicured lawns and suffocating homeowners association rules. The HOA, led by Evelyn Eve Caldwell, a 45-year-old woman with platinum blonde hair shellacked into place and a penchant for pastel skirt suits, viewed Jack's rustic property as a blemish on their vision of suburban perfection. Eve's silver SUV, gleaming like a trophy, was a familiar sight, often parked near Jack's fence as she scribbled notes about his unacceptable wooden gate or the unsanctioned wildflowers dotting his land. Jack, whose farm was grandfathered out of HOA jurisdiction, met her demands with polite refusals, citing his property deeds. But each encounter left a bitter taste. His wife, Clara, a 36-year-old schoolteacher with a sharp wit, often laughed off Eve's antics. "She's like a dictator in a sundress," Clara would say, sipping tea on their porch. But Jack, who spent his days coaxing life from the soil, sensed Eve's persistence was more than bureaucratic zeal. It was personal. Trouble brewed on a crisp Saturday morning when the doorbell's shrill chime interrupted Jack's coffee ritual. He opened the door to find Eve, her lavendered blazer clashing with the farm's earthy tones, flanked by Leonard, her nervous deputy, whose eyes darted like a cornered rabbit's. "Good morning, Mr. Ramsey," Eve began, her voice syrupy but edged with steel. "The HOA is hosting our summer festival, a celebration of community unity, and we'd love to use your barn as the venue. It's got that charming rural flair our residents crave." Jack leaned against the doorframe, his mug warm in his hand. "My barn? Eve, it's a working space. Hay, tools, and 2 bulls that don't take kindly to strangers. It's not a party hall. You'll need to find somewhere else." Eve's smile tightened, her eyes glinting like polished ice. "Oh, Jack, think of the goodwill. Our newer families want to connect with the area's farming roots. We'll handle cleanup, insurance, everything. It's a win-win." "Win for who?" she shot back, his tone firm but calm. "That barn's my livelihood. It's not safe for crowds, and I'm not risking my animals or equipment for your photo op. The answer's no." Leonard cleared his throat, mumbling, "It could boost property values, you know." But Eve cut him off with a sharp glance. "Mr. Ramsey," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous purr, "cooperation is the cornerstone of Greenview Meadows. Refusing us could make things difficult." Jack's jaw tightened, but he held her gaze. "Difficult? Eve, this is my land. You don't get to waltz in and claim it. Try your community center. It's got air conditioning and no livestock." He stepped back, ready to close the door. Eve's lips pursed, her clipboard clutched like a weapon. "We're not done here, Jack. The HOA represents progress, and progress doesn't stop for stubborn farmers. You'll see." She turned, her heels clicking on the porch, Leonard scurrying after her. as her SUV sped off, kicking up dust on the gravel drive. Jack felt a knot of unease tighten in his gut. Eve wasn't just pushy, she was calculating, and he'd seen that glint in her eyes before, in folks who mistook his quiet nature for weakness. Inside, Clara joined him, catching the tail end of the exchange. "She's got nerve," she said, pouring herself coffee. "What's her angle? Nobody needs a barn that bad." Jack frowned, staring out the window at the barn's red silhouette. "It's not just the barn. Mrs. Harper mentioned Eve's been cozying up to some developer. Bet she thinks turning my place into a community asset will line her pockets with some deal." He set his mug down, his mind racing. Eve's ambition wasn't about aesthetics, it was about profit, and his farm was the key to her scheme. That afternoon, Jack walked the property, checking the barn's heavy timber doors, and the padlock gleaming in the sun. Titan and Brutus snorted softly inside, their massive forms a comforting presence. "You boys are my secret weapon," he murmured, patting Brutus's flank. "I knew Eve wouldn't back down, her type never did." A neighbor's whisper had warned him of Eve's boasts at the community mailbox, claiming she had ways to get what she wanted. Jack's fishing trip to Clearwater Lake was days away, a ritual he cherished, but now it doubled as a strategic absence. He'd secure the barn, let Eve make her move, and let her own arrogance be her undoing. As he tightened the bolts on the side door, Clara appeared, her brow furrowed. "You sure about this, Jack? She's sneaky, might try something while you're gone." Jack grinned, a rare spark of mischief in his eyes. "That's the plan, Clara. She wants a party, she'll get one she won't forget. Those bulls aren't just livestock, they're my line in the sand." He glanced at the barn, its red walls standing defiant against the encroaching suburbia, and felt a surge of resolve. Eve thought she could steamroll him, but she was about to learn that some boundaries, forged in earth and iron, don't budge. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when Jack Ramsey's suspicions about Evelyn I.V. Caldwell's intentions hardened into certainty. He stood by his kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching the dust settle on his gravel drive where Eve's silver SUV had left its mark. The audacity of her demand to use his barn still stung, but it was the HOA's latest newsletter, slipped into his mailbox by a sympathetic neighbor, that set his blood simmering. Boldly printed across the front page was an announcement: Greenview Meadows Summer Festival at Ramsey's historic barn, a rustic celebration. Jack crumpled the paper, his jaw tight. They hadn't just ignored his refusal, they'd declared war, plastering their plans as if his property were theirs to claim. He knew Eve wasn't acting on whimsy. Her push to commandeer his barn was tied to a bigger scheme, one that smelled of greed and backroom deals. Clara, pouring tea at the counter, caught his expression. "They're really doing it, aren't they?" she said, her voice laced with disbelief. "What's your move, Jack?" Jack set the newsletter down, his voice steady, but edged with resolve. "I'm calling their bluff, Clara. They want to play dirty? I'll make sure they regret stepping foot on my land." He grabbed his phone and dialed the HOA's office line, expecting Eve's smug voicemail. When it clicked on, he spoke clearly, each word deliberate. "This is Jack Ramsey. Your newsletter is a lie. My barn is off limits, and I've made that clear. Retract this announcement or you're looking at a trespassing report. Don't test me." He hung up, knowing the message would likely be ignored, but needing it on record. The next few days brought a subtle escalation, a game of suburban espionage that only heightened Jack's vigilance. Leonard's gray sedan, unmistakable with its HOA sticker, cruised past the farm's fence line twice daily, slowing just enough to make Jack's skin prickle. "What's he looking for?" Claire asked one evening, peering out as the car idled near their gate. "They're scoping the barn," Jack replied, his eyes narrowing. "Eve's not planning to ask again. She's planning to take." His suspicion was confirmed when Mrs. Harper, the sharp-eyed widow down the road, called with a hushed warning. "Jack, I overheard Eve at the grocery store," she said, her voice low. She was bragging to some developer type about unlocking your land's potential, said the festival would prove its community property, drive up land values for a deal she's brokering. She's after a cut, mark my words. Jack's grip tightened on the phone. So that's her game, he said. Thanks, Mrs. Harper. Keep your eyes open. He hung up, turning to Clara. She's not just after a party. She's trying to flip my farm into a bargaining chip for some real estate hustle. Clara's eyes flashed. That's low, even for her. You think she'll break in? Bet on it, Jack said, a grim smile tugging at his lips. And I'll be ready. He spent the next day fortifying the barn. The heavy timber doors, already sturdy, got a fresh coat of oil on their hinges, ensuring the external padlocks snapped shut with a satisfying click. The side doors' internal bolts, rusted from disuse, were cleaned and tested, sliding into place with a solid thunk. He checked the high ventilation windows, their latches secure, accessible only by ladder. Inside, Titan and Brutus munched contentedly on alfalfa, their massive forms filling the barn's central space. You boys are my insurance policy, Jack murmured, scratching Titan's ear. The bulls snorted, oblivious to their role in the brewing showdown. That evening, as Jack mended a fence near the road, he caught Eve herself lingering near his property line, her phone pressed to her ear. It's handled, she said, her voice carrying faintly. We'll get in, one way or another. He's just a stubborn farmer. Jack straightened, locking eyes with her across the field. She froze, then lowered her phone, her expression shifting from smug to startled. Jack raised a hand, a slow, deliberate wave that carried a clear message. I see you. Eve turned abruptly, hurrying back to her SUV, tires spitting gravel as she sped off. She's rattled, Jack told Clara later, his voice low. Good, let her sweat. Clara frowned, setting down her knitting. Jack, what if she's got a key? Old owners leave spares all the time. Jack's eyes lit up with a spark of mischief. If she does, it's useless. I changed every lock years ago, but I'm not taking chances. He pulled out his phone, texting a local handyman to install a discreet trail camera near the barn's side door. If she tries anything, we'll have proof, he said, and I'll be long gone when she does. Jack's annual fishing trip to Clearwater Lake was just days away, a 4-hour drive to a serene haven where he'd cast lines and clear his mind. This year, it doubled as the perfect cover. He'd leave the farm locked tight, the bulls comfortably ensconced in the barn's main area, and let Eve's ambition lead her into a trap of her own making. You're playing chess with a bulldozer, Clara said, half amused, half worried. What if she brings a crowd? Then they'll meet Titan and Brutus, Jack replied, his grin widening. 2 tons of beef don't negotiate. He spent the next morning prepping the barn, scattering fresh straw and topping off the bull's water trough. The barn wasn't just a building, it was his fortress, and Eve was about to learn that some doors, once locked, stayed that way for a reason. As Jack loaded his fishing gear into his truck, Mrs. Harper called again, her voice urgent. Jack, I saw Leonard with a crowbar near your gate this morning. He didn't see me, but he was testing the lock. Eve's planning something big for Saturday. Jack's pulse quickened, but he kept his voice calm. Appreciate the heads up, Mrs. Harper. Let her try. She's in for a surprise. He hung up, his mind racing. Eve's desperation was mounting, and with it, the stakes. She wasn't just risking a party flop. She was gambling her reputation, her deal, her power. And Jack, with his bulls and his absence, was about to call her bluff in a way Greenview Meadows would never forget. The barn stood resolute under the blazing Saturday afternoon sun, its red walls a defiant sentinel against the encroaching ambitions of Greenview Meadows HOA. Inside, Titan and Brutus, the massive Angus bulls, lounged in the barn's central chamber, their slow breaths stirring the fresh straw beneath them. The heavy timber doors were locked tight, the side entrance secured with gleaming bolts, and a discreet trail camera blinked silently, poised to capture any intrusion. Jack Ramsey, miles away at Clearwater Lake, cast his fishing line into the shimmering water. His tackle box opened beside him, a picture of serenity masking the calculated trap he'd set. He knew Evelyn Eve Caldwell, driven by her greed-fueled vision of turning his farm into a bargaining chip for a lucrative land deal, would make her move today. The HOA's summer festival, falsely advertised as hosted in his barn, was her gambit to claim his property as a community asset. But Eve was about to discover that some boundaries, guarded by iron locks in a ton of beef, were immovable. At the farm, Eve arrived in her silver SUV, trailed by a small convoy of HOA volunteers, their vehicles loaded with folding tables, streamers, and a portable speaker blaring upbeat pop. Leonard, her jittery deputy, clutched a ring of old keys, his face pale with unease. A caterer's van idled nearby, its driver eyeing the locked barn with skepticism. Eve, in a coral sundress that clashed with her steely demeanor, strode to the barn's main doors, her heels sinking into the gravel. "This is it," she declared, her voice brimming with confidence. "Our festival will show everyone this land belongs to Greenview Meadows." Leonard fidgeted, glancing at the padlock. "Eve," he said, "no. What if he's got cameras or those bulls are inside?" Eve spun on him, her eyes flashing. "Stop whining, Leonard. Ramsey's off fishing and these keys are from the old owner. We're in the right. Community progress trumps his stubbornness." She snatched the keys, jabbing one into the padlock. It didn't budge. She tried another, then another, her face reddening. "What is this?" she hissed, rattling the lock. A volunteer, a lanky teenager named Kyle, piped up. "Maybe the side door. I saw it when we drove by yesterday." Eve nodded curtly, leading the group around the barn. The side door's bolts held firm, the keys useless. "This is outrageous," Eve snapped, slamming her palm against the wood. "He can't lock us out of our own event." Kyle, eager to please, pointed to a high ventilation window. "I could climb up there, pop the latch. I'm skinny enough to fit." Leonard hesitated, but Eve's eyes lit up. "Do it," she ordered. "We're not letting some farmer ruin our plans." Kyle grabbed a ladder from the caterer's van, propped it against the barn, and scrambled up, prying the latch with a pocket knife. He squeezed through, landing in a pile of hay inside. "Open the door, Kyle," Eve called, her voice triumphant. Moments later, the side door creaked open, and the group surged inside, dragging decorations and shouting instructions. "Streamers over here," Eve directed, pointing to a beam. "Tables along the wall." The caterer, a gruff man named Sal, muttered, "This place smells like a zoo. You sure it's safe?" Then they saw them, Titan and Brutus, standing like twin monoliths in the barn's center, their black coats gleaming, eyes fixed on the intruders. Titan snorted, pawing the straw, while Brutus swung his massive head, tail flicking. The group froze. "Holy," Kyle yelped, stumbling back. "Those things are huge." Eve's confidence shattered, her voice shrill. "Get them out. Move them to the back." She waved her clipboard as if it could herd a ton of bull. Leonard, backing toward the door, stammered, "Eve, we can't. They're not pets. They're monsters." Sal, the caterer, threw up his hands. "I'm out. I don't get paid to wrestle livestock." He bolted, his staff trailing behind. Kyle, still clutching a string of balloons, tried to edge around Titan. "Maybe if we—" Titan took a step forward, his hoof thudding like a hammer, and Kyle dropped the balloons, which popped with a sharp bang. Brutus bellowed, a deep rumbling sound that shook the rafters, sending the group scrambling. "Run!" Eve screamed, her sundress catching on a nail as she fled. Tables toppled, streamers tangled, and the speaker crashed to the floor, blaring static. Outside, the group regrouped, panting and disheveled. "This is his fault," Eve shrieked, her hair askew. "He knew those beasts would ruin everything." Leonard, wiping sweat from his brow, muttered, "We shouldn't have come. He warned us." Kyle, catching his breath, said, "There's no way we're getting those bulls out. They own that barn." Eve, trembling with rage, pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the sheriff. Ramsey set us up. He'll pay for this." She dialed, her voice shaking as she reported a dangerous situation involving uncontrolled animals. Miles away, Jack reeled in a trout, its scales flashing in the sunlight. His phone, tucked in his vest, vibrated with a voicemail from Mrs. Harper. "Jack, they're in your barn. Eve's group broke in and it's a mess. I'm watching from my window. Those bulls are stealing the show." Jack smirked, casting another line. He'd check the camera footage later, but for now, he let Eve's chaos unfold, knowing Titan and Brutus were more than capable of defending their turf. Back at the farm, a sheriff's deputy arrived, his cruiser kicking up dust. Eve rushed to him, pointing at the barn. "Officer, those animals are a menace. Ramsey locked them in there to sabotage our festival." The deputy, a stocky man named Hayes, raised a hand. "Slow down, ma'am. You're saying you entered a private barn without permission?" Eve faltered, then rallied. "It's for the community. We had to. Our event was announced." Leonard, shrinking behind her, mumbled, "We thought we had a key." Hayes's eyes narrowed. "A key doesn't mean consent. Sounds like you're trespassing." Inside the barn, Titan and Brutus stood their ground, calm but immovable, as if daring the HOA to try again. Eve's festival was dead on arrival, her dreams of land deal crumbling under the weight of her own recklessness. Jack's absence, his locked doors and his bowls, had turned her power play into a humiliating rout, and the real reckoning was just beginning. The chaos at the barn had left Greenview Meadows buzzing with scandal, the air thick with the dust of Eve Caldwell's shattered festival plans. The Red Barn stood defiant, its locked doors and indomitable occupants, Titan and Brutus, the massive Angus bulls, having routed the HOA's trespassing party in a spectacle of bellows and broken balloons. The sheriff's cruiser idled in the driveway, its lights casting Deputy Sheriff Harrow's silhouette across the gravel as he scribbled notes from a disheveled Eve, her coral sundress torn and her authority in tatters. Her volunteers scattered across the lawn whispered among themselves, while Leonard hovered nearby, his eyes darting nervously for escape. Neighbors peered from their porches, drawn by the sirens and the failed festival's ignominy. Jack, still casting lines at Clearwater Lake, was oblivious to the unfolding drama, his trail camera silently recording the HOA's intrusion, poised to seal Eve's fate. But the high-stakes showdown was cresting now, as Eve's desperation to salvage her reputation collided with a deeper, more damning revelation, one that would expose her greed and reshape the neighborhood's future. Deputy Sheriff Harrow's voice was measured, cutting through Eve's frantic accusations. "Ma'am, you're telling me you broke into a secured barn because you thought it was community property? That's not how the law works. I need the truth, or this gets worse for you." Eve's eyes blazed, her hands gesturing wildly. "That man's a menace. He left those monsters in there to sabotage our event. We had every right. Our festival was for the good of Greenview Meadows." Leonard, wringing his hands, muttered, "Eve, maybe we should just apologize. He did warn us." She rounded on him, her voice a venomous hiss. "Shut up, Leonard. You're as spineless as he is stubborn. We're the HOA. We set the standards, not some dirt farmer." Deputy Sheriff Harrow raised an eyebrow, jotting a note. "Dirt farmer or not, this is his property. You forced entry, damaged a window. That's trespassing, maybe vandalism. Who gave you permission to be here?" Eve faltered, her bravado cracking. We had a key from the previous owner. It's practically public access for community events." Kyle, the teenage volunteer, still clutching his crowbar, piped up nervously. "The key didn't work, officer. We had to break the window to get in. Eve said it was fine." Harrow's gaze hardened, turning to Eve. "You authorized breaking and entering? That's a felony charge, ma'am. And you're claiming public access to a private barn?" Before Eve could respond, Mrs. Harper, the widowed neighbor who'd been watching from her porch, marched over, her cane tapping sharply. "Deputy, "I've got something to say," she announced, her voice firm despite her frail frame. "Eve's not just after a party. She's been scheming with a developer to sell HOA land for a fortune. Said turning Ramsey's farm into a community venue would jack up the price. I heard her boasting about her cut at the market last week." The crowd of neighbors gasped, their murmurs swelling into outrage. Sal, the caterer, still fuming over his ruined equipment, stepped forward. "That's why she pushed so hard? You trashed my business for some shady deal?" Eve's face drained of color, her clipboard slipping from her grasp. "That's a lie," she shrieked, pointing at Mrs. Harper. "You're just a nosy old woman spreading gossip. I'm protecting property values." Mrs. Harper didn't flinch. "Gossip? I've got emails, Deputy." Eve sent them to the developer, promising exclusive access to Ramsey's land. She's been siphoning HOA dues to her friend's fake consulting firm to fund her little empire. Deputy Sheriff Harrow's radio crackled as he called for backup. "Dispatch, send a detective. We've got potential fraud tied to this trespassing incident." He turned to Eve, his tone icy. "You're coming to the station, Miss Caldwell. We're sorting this out now." Eve's eyes darted to her SUV as if contemplating escape, but Leonard grabbed her arm. "Eve, stop. You're making it worse." She shook him off, her voice rising to a desperate wail. "You can't do this. I'm the president of the HOA. This community needs me." Kyle, now thoroughly spooked, tossed his crowbar into the grass. "I'm not going to jail for you, lady. I just wanted volunteer hours for school." He backed away, joining the dispersing volunteers who muttered about lawsuits and refunds. A new figure emerged from the crowd. Marjorie Tate, the HOA treasurer, her face grim. "Deputy, I've been auditing our books." She held up a flash drive. "Eve's been funneling thousands to a shell company run by her college roommate. Those consulting fees for the festival, they're a scam. I was going to present this at the next meeting, but she needs to answer now." The neighbors erupted, their voices a chorus of betrayal. "She's been stealing from us," one shouted. "No wonder my dues keep rising," another added, waving a phone recording the scene. Mrs. Harper nodded at Marjorie. "You're braver than I thought, Marjorie. About time someone stood up to her." Eve's composure shattered, tears streaking her mascara. "You're all turning on me," she screamed, her voice raw. "I made this place perfect. Without me, you'd be living in a pigsty." Deputy Sheriff Harrow shook his head, motioning to a second deputy who'd just arrived. "Cuff her if she won't come willingly. We're looking at trespassing, vandalism, and now possible embezzlement." The second deputy, a woman with a no-nonsense stare, approached Eve. "Let's go, ma'am. Don't make this harder." Eve backed away, her heels catching in the grass. "This is a setup. Ramsey planned this. He knew those bulls would ruin everything." But her words fell flat, drowned by the neighbor's scorn. Sal, loading his van, shouted, "You ruined it yourself, Caldwell. My lawyer's calling your HOA tomorrow." Marjorie stepped closer to Harrow, her voice low. "I've got bank records, Deputy. Transfers to Eve's roommate's account, fake invoices. She even billed us for barn renovation planning that never happened. She's been at this for months." Harrow nodded, taking the flash drive. "This'll go to the detective. Miss Tate, you're coming to the station to make a statement." He turned to the crowd. "Anyone else with evidence, speak now or call the sheriff's office. This is serious." Mrs. Harper raised her cane. "I'll testify. Eve's been bullying us for years, finding my roses for being too red. She's no president, she's a crook." The neighbors cheered, their phones capturing every moment, the video already spreading across social media with hashtags like HOA takedown. Eve, now flanked by deputies, tried one last plea. "You're making a mistake. I'm the victim here." But her voice was swallowed by the crowd's jeers. The female deputy guided her to the cruiser, the door slamming shut with a finality that echoed across the farm. Leonard, left behind, sank onto the grass, muttering, "I told her it was a bad idea." Miles away, Jack sat by the lake, a trout tugging his line, unaware of the storm he'd unleashed. His phone buzzed with another voicemail from Mrs. Harper. "Jack, you won't believe it. Eve's in cuffs. They found her embezzling. Your bulls are heroes." Jack chuckled, reeling in his catch. He checked the camera footage tomorrow, knowing it would show Eve's crime in stark clarity. For now, he let the lake's calm wash over him, certain that Eve's empire was crumbling under the weight of her own deceit. Back at the farm, the deputies secured the scene, photographing the broken window and scattered decorations. Marjorie and Mrs. Harper huddled with neighbors, planning an emergency HOA meeting to oust Eve and reform the board. The barn, unyielding, stood as a testament to Jack's quiet defiance, its bulls the unwitting champions of a community reclaiming its voice. Eve's dream of a festival had birthed the reckoning, one that would expose her greed and restore balance to Greenview Meadows. The dust of Evelyn Eve Caldwell's downfall settled over Greenview Meadows, but the neighborhood hummed with a newfound resolve. The red barn stood tall, its heavy timber doors unshaken, a fortress where Titan and Brutus, the massive Angus bulls, grazed contentedly on fresh alfalfa, oblivious to their role as the catalysts of a community uprising. The sheriff's cruiser had carted Eve away, her schemes of embezzlement and trespass laid bare by Marjorie Tate's damning evidence and Mrs. Harper's relentless pursuit of truth. The trail camera's footage, still unviewed, waited like a final nail, ready to cement the HOA's guilt. Jack Ramsey, his truck loaded with fresh trout from Clearwater Lake, was due home, his calculated absence having set the stage for Eve's self-destruction. The neighbors, once cowed by Eve's clipboard, now buzzed with plans to reform their HOA, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance. But the saga wasn't over. Eve's final desperate ploy and the community's awakening would etch a lasting lesson in the farm's red earth, ensuring no tyrant would dare trespass again. Jack pulled into his gravel driveway as dusk painted the sky, the farm's familiar scent of hay and soil grounding him after days by the lake. Tire tracks scarred the ground near the barn, and a tattered festival banner hung limply on his fence, a pathetic relic of Eve's failed gala. A sheriff's business card tucked into his door hinted at the chaos he'd missed. Before he could greet him, Mrs. Harper shuffled over, her cane tapping a triumphant rhythm. "You're back, Jack," she called, her eyes bright. "It's a regular revolution, Jack. Eve's done for, cursed her to jail for good. Your barn's the talk of the town." Jack grinned, unloading his cooler. "Sounds like Titan and Brutus threw quite the party. Fill me in, Harper." She leaned in, voice low. "They hauled Eve off in cuffs, embezzling, trespassing, the works. Marjorie found proof she was funneling our dues to her friend's fake company. The whole neighborhood's up in arms." "Whistle." Jack glanced at the barn. "And they thought they could waltz in here? What's the damage?" "Just a busted window," Mrs. Harper said. "Your bulls scared 'em witless. Deputy Sheriff Harrell's waiting for your statement. Got a detective on the case now." Inside, Jack's wife Clara met him with a smirk. "You missed a circus," she said, pouring coffee. "Mrs. Harper's been updating me. Eve's screaming about lawsuits from the station." "Let her scream," Jack replied, pulling out his phone to check the trail camera app. The footage loaded. Eve's SUV arriving, Kyle prying the window, the group's panicked retreat as Titan bellowed. "Got 'em dead to rights," he said, saving the file. "This'll shut her up." That evening, the community center overflowed with residents for an emergency HOA meeting, the air electric with outrage. Marjorie took the podium, her voice steady. "We've been robbed," she declared, holding up printouts of bank records. Eve siphoned $20,000 for consulting that never happened. Her festival was a front to claim Ramsey's land for a developer's deal. She'd get a 10% cut. A neighbor, Mr. Torres, stood, his voice booming. "She fined me for my kid's treehouse. Was that money for her scam too?" Marjorie nodded. "Likely. We're auditing everything. I move to remove Eve as president and freeze her access to our accounts." Seconded, Mrs. Harper shouted, banging her cane. The vote was unanimous, the room erupting in cheers. Leonard, slinking in the back, tried to speak. "I didn't know about the money," he pleaded. "Eve pressured me." "Save it, Leonard," a woman snapped. "You followed her like a puppy. Resign." Leonard shrank, nodding meekly, his resignation scribbled on a napkin by the meeting's end. A new twist emerged when Kyle's mother, a lawyer named Denise, stood. "My son was coerced into breaking into that barn," she said, her voice sharp. "He's a minor and Eve exploited him. I'm filing a complaint against her for endangering a child." The crowd roared approval, and Marjorie seized the moment. "We need a new president," she said. "I nominate Karen Ellis. She's fair, transparent, and won't bully us." Karen, a retired librarian, accepted with a nod, promising no more fines for roses or treehouses. "We're a community, not a dictatorship." As the meeting adjourned, Jack arrived, invited by Mrs. Harper. He stood quietly, but neighbors swarmed him, shaking his hand. "Your bull saved us," Mr. Torres said, laughing. "Name him honorary mayor." Jack chuckled, deflecting praise. "Just protecting what's mine," he said. "You folks did the rest." The next day, Jack met Deputy Sheriff Harrow at the sheriff's office, handing over the camera footage. "Clear as day," Harrow said, watching Eve's group break in. "This'll bury her case. Trespassing, vandalism, and with Miss Tate's evidence, fraud charges are sticking." Jack leaned back, arms crossed. "What's her play now? She's not one to go quietly." Harrow sighed. "She's claiming you entrapped her, but it's weak. Your property was secured and you were gone. She's looking at restitution and maybe jail time." Back home, Jack found a certified letter from Eve's lawyer demanding he pay for emotional distress caused by his negligent livestock. Clara laughed, tossing it on the table. "She's delusional," she said. "What's next, suing the bulls?" "Wouldn't put it past her," Jack replied, drafting a response with his cousin, a pro bono lawyer. He included a bill for the broken window and a vet check for Titan and Brutus, adding, "Further harassment will be met with a countersuit." The HOA, under Karen's leadership, paid the bill promptly, attaching a formal apology for unauthorized actions. Weeks later, Eve's house hit the market, her reputation in ruins. The fraud investigation uncovered a web of fake invoices, leading to her roommate's arrest. Eve pleaded guilty to reduced charges, avoiding jail but facing hefty fines. Greenview Meadows transformed under Karen's guidance. Wildflowers bloomed unchecked, and mailboxes sported unapproved colors. Jack, ever the farmer, added a bright blue gate, a cheeky nod to his victory. One evening, as Jack and Clara sat on their porch, the barn's silhouette glowed against the sunset. "Think she'll ever show her face again?" Clara asked, sipping tea. Jack smirked, scratching their dog's ears. "Doubt it. She met her match in 1,000 pounds of beef." He raised his mug. "To Titan and Brutus, best security team in town." Clara clinked her cup against his. "And to you for outsmarting her without lifting a finger." The tale of the barn became local legend, a cautionary yarn about greed and boundaries. It taught Greenview Meadows that power unchecked breeds corruption, and a community's strength lies in its unity, not its tyrants. Jack's quiet stand, backed by his bulls and a well-timed fishing trip, proved that sometimes the simplest defenses, a locked door, a loyal neighbor, are the most formidable. Got a story of standing up to an overzealous HOA? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of justice served. The tale of Jack Ramsey's barn and Eve Caldwell's downfall in Greenview Meadows delivers a powerful lesson. Greed and overreach invite their own ruin. Eve's attempt to seize Jack's farm for profit, ignoring his rights, collapsed under the weight of her hubris, exposed by Titan and Brutus, the bulls who guarded their home. Her embezzlement and trespass, caught on camera, underscore that abusing authority, whether through HOA tyranny or false claims, erodes trust and invites justice. Jack's quiet defiance, backed by community courage, shows that standing firm, documenting evidence, and uniting against corruption can topple even the most entrenched bullies. This story reminds us to respect boundaries and hold power accountable, ensuring communities thrive on fairness, not fear. For anyone facing petty despots, take note, protect your rights, rally allies, and let truth be your weapon. Eve's defeat proves that no scheme outlasts a united front. Want more gripping tales of triumphs over tyranny? Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support fuels these stories, so hit that button and join us for the next saga of justice served. Share your own battles with overzealous HOAs below. We'd love to hear them. Let's keep the fight for fairness alive.